ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्महेश्वर गुरुसाक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। ओम शांति शांति शांति। The Gita begins with the mention of Dhritarashtra. The first verse is given as spoken by Dhritarashtra. Dharmakshetre kurukshetre samaveda yuyutsavaha mamakaha pandava chaiva kimakuru vada sanjaya. Dhritarashtra is a king. Dhrita, Rashtra, these are two words. Rashtra means a nation. Dhrita means holding, supporting. The president of a country or the king of a country is a Dhritarashtra. Literally it only means the ruler of a country. But in this particular case, this is a blind king. Blind here means blind to justice, blind to truth, blind to statesmanship, blind to whatever a president, king or the chief executive of a country should know or be. And that is a suggestion why the Gita teaching was given or Gita teaching should be. Whenever there is a decline of law and the need to restore law, there should be the enunciation of law by a lawgiver, and then it should be enforced. And here a case is stated that the king has gone blind, and therefore there is a need for someone who has foresight and insight to revalue and restate law. And such a restatement is in the Gita. Therefore, it is very appropriate that the Gita is taught in a country to a seeker who was made a victim by a blind king. It begins with this blind king. The Gita ends also with reference to the same blind king. Thus from beginning to end, like a stream, the blind king is behind it. And everything is spoken keeping in mind of a blind person. Blindness here means ignorance. In you and I, there is the same kind of ignorance. We are not fully awakened. We are not rishis or illuminated seers. We are ordinary human beings. As such, in us, there is a degree of ignorance. And that degree of ignorance is represented by Dhritarashtra here. And Dhritarashtra was blind, and therefore he didn't know what was happening. There came his sons and the sons of his brother to the battlefield. His sons have usurped the land of his brother's children, and they came to reclaim that. And so there was to be this war. Lord Krishna was a peacemaker. He tried to mediate between these two groups, but his peace offer didn't work. So they decided to wage war. They came to the battlefield. But the blind king couldn't see, and therefore Lord Krishna made a favor to him. The favor was giving him an aid, a person who had a transparency of vision and thus could see and report. In these days, where we have the use of television, a thing which is happening in a far-off land, you can watch the television and see. In ancient days, there was this spiritual device by which Sanjaya could see. He could see through time and space and then report to the blind king. Here we have this picture showing Sanjaya above, Dhritarashtra below, and in the middle is a representation of the battlefield. The battlefield is shown somewhat like in the Chinese Taoist concept of the yin and yang, half black and half bright. So our life is like that. In our life there is something positive and something negative, and that makes the whole. And here the children of Dhritarashtra are shown as entering through the dark side, and the children of Pandu entering through the bright side. And this can always change. Nobody is absolutely black or absolutely white, and thus we have a representation of the changing world and the changing values. So the blind king is instructed by Sanjaya, and Sanjaya is used as a literary device so that wherever there is a gap in conversation, by bringing in Sanjaya, the gap is filled. The first verse, Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre, in the field of Dharma, in the field of the Kuru, Samaveda Yutsavaha, where people have assembled with the intention of waging war. Mamakaha, my people, Pandava Chaiva, and also the people of Pandu. Kim Akurvada, what did they do, O Sanjaya? So Dhritarashtra, the king, is asking Sanjaya this question. In this first verse, there are a number of implications. It is a tradition in India that when you begin a classical work, you have to say in the opening verse your intention. What is the book about? And here, the very first word says Dharma. This book is going to elucidate Dharma. So this is a book on dharma. That is why the first word dharma. Kshetra means a field. The field of dharma. People usually translate the word dharma as righteousness, but it is to be understood in a much wider sense. So I have asked Andy to draw a picture which explains various aspects of the dharma. I think you can put the picture. There is a symbolic presentation of the 5 elements here. What is shown here in this brown color, that is earth. Earth is called dhara. Dhara means that which supports, that which holds. Big trees, big buildings, they are all supported by the earth, so they don't fall through. That is the dharma of earth. Dharma means that intrinsic quality by which a thing is what it is. So if earth cannot support, then it is not earth. So where there is a dharma, it functions. For something to function, there has to be a very special kind of structure for it. So my hand has a structure, and because of that structure, I can close my hand, I can open my hand. So it is a structure which is enabling the function. The structure and function always go together. And if the structure is defective, it cannot function. Even when the structure is there, if there is a dysfunction, then the structure becomes useless. The entire world is a world of structure, intended for some function, one function or another. Here are a number of machines connected, each with the other. Our hope is that they are all functioning. And if they do not function, then the dharma is not performed. So wherever there is dharma, there is a performance, and that performance is an action. So we have seen that this earth is performing its function by having a close cohesion of all the particles, all the atoms, all the molecules, and thus it is keeping itself firm, solid enough for a tree to stand. And then there is the water, it flows. Even when there is an obstruction there, the water circumvents it, then it flows. That is the function of water, which is different from the function of earth. So each one has a different dharma, that means a different intrinsic quality. There is an intrinsic quality of water, there is an intrinsic quality of earth, one is different from the other, and that distinguishes a thing from the other. So it is a dharma which distinguishes a thing from another. We have here fire burning. That is another element which has that function, that dharma. So if fire does not burn, then it is not fire. If water doesn't flow, then it is not water of that state. It can be ice, or it can be vapor. Then it changes. It assumes a new dharma. So a thing may have more than one dharma, such as water which becomes solid, water which becomes vaporous, and water which flows. And then the cloud. The cloud is raining. That is the dharma of the cloud. And the wind blows. Thus in the elements, we see all these dharma, all these qualities. We are also made of the same elements, plus something else. And thus we also have to perform. Our performance decides what kind of dharma we have. Say here Dr. Poiti is a doctor, he is a therapist. He attends patients and he should know how to diagnose, how to prescribe medicine, and how to do a surgery if that is required. That is his dharma, but it's not mine. I am a teacher. I cannot distinguish between one disease and another disease if it is a physical disease. But if it is something on the mind, I may. And I teach. It's my dharma. And his dharma is to draw. He's an artist. To bring an idea visually, he knows how to do that. Thus, every person stationed in the life has his or her particular dharma to perform. And this is a book. Gita is a book which is dealing with that vast world of dharma in which we all cooperate. We, in this corporate life of ours, we supplement the dharma of each other so that we can make our life on earth beautiful. And if one among us is not functioning well, it is like the nut or bolt of an aeroplane which is loose, and that can be disastrous. So when there is more and more dysfunction or malfunction, the world loses its harmony, peace, goodness. Like engineers who are attending on a plane to see that it is airworthy, we have to say that all the dharmas are properly performed so that the world can continue to be beautiful. Unfortunately, it is not so. Every now and then something is failing. So there is this great need for continuous vigilance, continuous correction, continuous repair, so that we will keep the world going. Dharma Kshetra, immediately after saying Dharma Kshetra, the word Kurukshetra was mentioned. In the Mahabharata context, the family involved in this particular battle was of the Kuru family. Therefore you may say that field where the war was going on was Kurukshetra. But in a philosophical sense, the word Kuru is also derived from the root Krit, which means action, the word of action. I already said that where there is dharma, there is also karma. Karma means action. So dharma means something is potentially there. And what is potential? When it is released, actualized, then it becomes a karma. So dharma and karma go hand in hand. If dharma is not there, there cannot be karma. And there can also be, like dharma, adharma. That means a wrong function. The possibility for a freak function. And where there is a freak potential, there comes a wrong action. And thus, the potentials for the freak are to be corrected before that becomes actualized. In us, because of our previous conditioning, there are various such free possibilities. We ourselves do not know until they come out. And a good doctor, a good physician can see a disease at this very early stage and can prevent it. That prevention helps people not to get into later catastrophes. Similarly, a good teacher can see what would become of a student, and those conditionings, those colorations in his life, which are likely to be disasters, is corrected by the teacher, and that is how adharma is corrected and made to dharma. Thus, this book is dealing with the two main aspects of our life. The first is the potentials of the man. Second, the actualization of the potential. And we have taken here a typical case. It has the case of an individual who is placed within the society. So there comes the social behavior on one side and the individual participation in the social behavior. Yesterday I explained of the three principles which are assembled here: the world, the individual, and God or the Absolute. God is controlling or ruling over the world and also the person, the individual. The individual has a direct relationship with the world and also a relationship with the supreme law that is governing everything. And we call that supreme law God. And if somebody is not theistic and calls that by some other name, like truth, law, still fine. But he is also meaning the same thing. Whether a person is an atheist or a theist, no one can escape the idea of an overruling value, an overruling truth. You may be a physicist, a chemist, a biologist, but you have to reduce physics to one single principle of physical energy, and chemist has to reduce everything to chemistry, chemicals or elements, and the biologist has to reduce everything to one single life, because it can have many variations. And that reduction, final reduction of everything in the phenomena into one single reality, that defies a description with words. So people call it different words. The Taoist says, the Tao that can be spoken of is no Tao. And even then, it is described with 10,001 words. So this 10,001 word with which we describe the Absolute is the nameless one. And that nameless is presiding over the world and also the individual. The world, we see, is a field of action. And it is the field in which the individual acts and reacts. He is acted upon. He is reacted upon. In turn he acts and he reacts. Thus there is a dialectical polarization between the individual and the universe, the individual and society. The society can be as small as one friend, or a family, a community, a country, fellow believers all over the world of a particular ideology. The entire world, all these form the community in which the person is placed. So in this particular words, Dhritarashtra, the blind king, is asking Sanjaya, one who can see through, of what was happening. Did these two contending forces come to agreement, and have they now gone back peacefully, or is the war going on? And in this, there are some other suggestions which are very important. Why is war after all? The war is born in the mind of people, and it comes only when you have disagreement with the other. So you are there, the other is there. Between you and the other, there is always war or love. War and peace is between you and the other. But I call you, you say I. So I and the other. I is called the self, and the other, the non-self. But what is non-self for me is maybe self for you. Western psychologists, when they use the word self, they are mostly using it in the sense of the ego. In R.D. Laing's Self and the Other, Divided Self, and books like that, what he means by self is that ego in us, which you refer to as I consciousness. When we look around, we see a horizon. Beyond the horizon we cannot see. Is there anything called horizon? Oh no. Our eye is so made and our brain so functions that this span of our vision becomes limited and becomes circular to us. So we see a horizon. Wherever we move in the world, we carry a horizon around us which is to the limit of our own eyesight. And similarly, the self that we carry around has also a boundary. You may call this the ego boundary, the boundary of the self. In a person, the ego boundary can cave in, can become so close that he feels stifled. All around him, he finds there is rejection. He is not recognized, he is not admitted. That means his horizon contracts, it smothers him, it stifles him. Then he has to fight and push it, and he puts all kinds of pressures, or he succumbs to it. Either he fights or he succumbs. But when your understanding of the self increases, your horizon also widens. A person who is fully enlightened of the self, it is as if he has no finite horizon. Wherever he looks, he sees a continuation of his own self, and thus he has no other there to fight. Where there is love, when a person says I and you, when they melt in love, they say we. So when you say we, when you say us, the boundary is gone. You have melted, you have become one. But here this man says, my people and my brother's people. What happened to my people and my brother's people? So he makes one group and he makes another group. And it is this division of people that really paved the way for war. So where there is duality, there will be this contention, this war. And where there is unity, there is love and peace and joy. Hence in the Gita Dhyana, it is described as Advaita Amrita Varshani. The Gita is the showering of the nectar of immortality of non-dual vision. Where there is non-dual vision, it is as if there is a continuous showering of immortality. So where there is a duality, then you be prepared to fight, shed blood, die. So death is only where there is duality. Even when a person physically dies, that person continues in your heart, because in your love there is no death. You do not accept the physical absence of your best friend, the dearest person, as anything real. The reality is the presence of the one whom you love in the heart, and therefore that is not gone, that has not perished. So you recognize immortality of that person. I think it was Freud who said that immortality is living in that you get to live in your friend's heart. When you have more and more people in whose heart you live, it is as if you have become immortal. When a person is loved through centuries with the same fervor, the same passion, such as Lord Buddha, Jesus Christ. Thousands of years have gone, but love for those persons are not diminished. That means they continue. The physical death they had, it is as if that didn't occur. And thus, when this person, the king says, my people and your people, something wrong has come. That shows his blindness, his spiritual blindness. When his brother Pandu was about to die, Pandu entrusted the custody of his sons to his brother Dhritarashtra. And then Dhritarashtra assured Pandu that he would look after these 5 children as his own children. He said, until now I had 100 children, but hereafter I will have 105 sons. But he turned away from that promise by thinking of his people and the people of Pandu. Now what is the relevancy of this for us? Are we trying to study here a historical fact which happened 2000 or 3000 or 4000 years ago? Or are we considering our own personal case? We are considering here our own case. We are thinking here of our relationship with the world. This world is a world of dharma, a world where law is operating. The law is physical, chemical, biologic, moral, social, and other laws which are such as aesthetic, ethical, etc., which are all there. That there is a crisscrossing of laws, and we are governed by that. And in that, we are an integral part of it. For us, there has to be the harmonious functioning. And is that harmonious functioning going on? Or somewhere it is at stake? So if you experience that someone you have to fight, someone you are afraid of, someone to whom you are indifferent, and someone whom you do not recognize. That means your dharma is not fully operating. You do not know your dharma, what your dharma is. And that is the problem presented here through this first verse. Now Sanjay is speaking. When Sanjay is speaking, another person is presented. Other than Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya, now we have a third person. He is Duryodhana. And Duryodhana is turning to his teacher, Drona. And he is calling attention to the war situation. Put the other picture. This picture is representing some aspects of the original book Mahabharata, to which Gita belongs. In the Gita Dhyana there is a verse, Bhishma Drona Tada Jayadratha Jala Gandhara Nilo Bala Shalyagrahavadi Krubanavahani Karnena Velagula Ashwadhama Vidarna Khora Magara Duryodhana Vartini Sotirna Khalu Pandavai Ranamadi Kaivartaga Keshavaha. Many names are mentioned here, and a situation is given here. The situation is of a river in which some people are crossing the river. What kind of a river is this? This is called a river of battle, a river of contention, a river of fight. And there are some passengers and a boatman, a ferryman. The ferryman is taking them across. But this is not an ordinary river or even an ordinary river, war river, just two banks. And those two banks are showing two people. They are called Bhishma Drona Tada. Which one is Bhishma and the above? This is Bhishma. He is the patriarch of the family. And all the people involved in this are his children and grandchildren. Actually, not direct grandchildren, but indirectly his grandchildren. Drona is a teacher who came into the family. In all the war that is going on within us also, there are these two sides. One is your own hereditary background. Something in you is hereditary, and something else you have acquired through your learning from the teacher. The whole world is teaching you. The source of all teaching in India is called the Veda. Some people think of Veda as a book, but some other wise men, they say Ved means to know. The child, as soon as it comes to this world, you start knowing that there is heat and cold in this world. And it opens his eyes and it sees light and darkness there. And it feels hungry and thirsty. There is hunger and thirst. And light, when it falls into the eye, if it is too strong, it closes his eyes. And he wants to defend himself from that. There's a very beautiful description of this in Romain Rolland, Jean Christophe, or Jean Christopher. How when Jean Christophe was born, there was no light there. And his grandfather brought a light to look at his face. And the mother said, "Oh father, please don't bring that light. My child cannot stand it." And he started crying, howling, saying how even as a child we recognize the quality of the world to which we have come. And this is a world which will make us cry. By crying and by resisting, by defending, we learn many things. And all those are represented by the teacher here. The world is your teacher. The world is the Veda. Everything in the world is making you know, and it teaches you. And thus you are taught by Drona. But the word Drona is a not good word. It means you get knowledge, but you use the knowledge for a wrong purpose. So this is a peculiar teacher who has tremendous knowledge, great knowledge, but the knowledge is usually used for a wrong purpose. And this person, the patriarch, who is representing the genes in you, your chromosomes, your DNA and RNA, and so many other things in modern science, and in the ancient world, he also represents your grassroots. So your problem is arising from your grassroots and your genes, plus what the world expects from you, and what kind of a mess or a mesh which the world is, through which you as a little mouse has to pass through without getting many shocks. But you are shocked and you are learning by that. So Bhishma and Drona are representing these two aspects of life, and the battle of our life is happening in between. Certain things which you have inherited from your parents, if they are too strong for this world, you have to correct them. You have to tame them. What is education for? Taming your natural potentials. And in that war river, more descriptions are given. Bhishma Drona Dada Jayadratha Jala. Jala means water. Jayadratha is the Jala of this river. Who's Jayadratha? See, the ancient Greeks, they spoke of earth, eros, and chaos. Three principles. On one side is chaos, and on the other side is eros. And eros is trying to make chaos more and more lovable by giving order to it, making it cosmos. So the earth, when it is fully ordered, it becomes part of the cosmos. When it is disordered, it is the chaos. Like the principles of entropy and negentropy, if entropy is allowed to have its ways, it puts everything out of gear. But negentropy is conceived as a principle which is cooling everything that is tending to become zero. So the principle of thermodynamics. And thus, between these two things, there is a homeostasis. And our life is thus what it is because of these two opposite principles. And Jayadratha, he is a person who is erotic and who is chaotic. On one aspect of him is that he is erotic. He looks for something pleasurable, something to enjoy. But he has no sense of proportion. So a man who is raping, who wants to rape, is also having a temporary love for an object of pleasure, but he does not know how he is cutting across many laws, many conventions to do that. So that he becomes chaotic. He is erotic and he is chaotic. And Jayadratha is such a person. So this battle river of ours is both erotic and chaotic. According to Freud, the most basic principle in us is the libidinal principle, the libido. In Oriental philosophy, they have another word for it. They don't call it libido. They call it rati, rasa. Ras means to taste, to enjoy. The entire world is for us to enjoy. We enjoy through our eyes, through our nose, through our touch, through our mind, through our imagination. Thus the world is described as a chariot. A chariot of desire. A chariot of desire to enjoy. And that chariot is drawn by the horses of your senses. And the person who is in the chariot is your eye consciousness. You are always desirous of enjoying an object of pleasure, and you are moving towards that by turning your chariot to run after it, chase after it. And that love to enjoy, that thirst for pleasure is life. But that makes you also lose your sense of value sometimes. So you have to think of such kind of a river in which you are caught. Jayadratha jala gandhara nilopala. In some texts you may read nilopala. Nilopala means blue lilies. But actually it should be nilopala. Nilopala means black rocks. In the river of life, which is both erotic and chaotic, there can be big black rocks obstructing your path. The 100 children of Gandhari are described here as forces of obstruction, and therefore they are called Nilopala, Gandhar Nilopala. Then you say Shalya Grahavati. You can see there a crocodile shown in that river. That he is called Shalya. Literally, Shalya means when you have a boil or something like that on your body, a tumor, and if a thorn is thrust into it, how painful it is. That is called Shalya. Some people, they are against you, but you don't care. They are the mere against you. But a person whom you loved and trusted, when that person turns against you, you cannot excuse that. You cannot put up with that. Shalya is such a person. He was the friend of the Pandavas almost to the very night before the war was going to be. And then on that night, he defected to the opposite side. This can happen to us also. A person whom we trust, a person from whom we take our counseling, on whom you count so much, when he defects, he deceives, and he breaks the trust, that becomes the most painful thing in life. So we have seen the obstructions that can come in the path, and now this great breach of trust that can come. Then you are also shown here Kripa Navahani, even then it has a flow. That flow is given as Kripa. Kripa was a character of the Mahabharata well known for his love, his beautiful behavior, his great sense of ethics. So in spite of all these obstructions, life still continues to flow because there are some kindly people. Here and there you may come across a person who is kind, who is compassionate. Even though they are already few, with those few people, this world is going on. So that is called Kripanavahani. Karnina Velagula. You find a lot of waves here. There was one person in the situation called Karna. Actually, he was the elder brother of the Pandavas, and he did not know until the war. But he was on the opposite side. So you are drawn between two opposite loyalties. A person, he knows that one thing is right, but he has committed himself to another thing. There is a great book called The Great Headmaster, Sanderson, of an English school. He was teaching his children the high ideals of loving your neighbor as your own self. But after the class, there was the national anthem, Britannia rolling the waves, and then the immediate neighbor of England is France, and Britain to have a war with France and win, and loving your neighbor as your own self. These are two opposite ideals, and this headmaster has to teach both. As an Englishman, he had to keep with the British anthem. As a headmaster, he had to teach to love your neighbor as your own self. And the conflict was so much that he fell down dead. So this can happen to us. Our mind becomes so wavery. What should we stand for in life? The higher ideals as a man, or the ideals of a citizen? When two people face each other in the United Nations Forum, they cannot see each other as human beings. Because one person is representing the political ideology of the ruling party of his country, and another the ruling party of the other country. And if they are at loggerheads, these people, they have to suppress their human voice and speak only in partisan spirit. And it is at that time the humanity in them will waver. And thus Karna is presented here. If you read Mahabharata, and whenever you come to a description of the life of Karna, you cannot restrain your tears. Tears will flow down your cheeks to see the great conflict of this man who was a whole person. But he was not allowed to live as a whole person. And therefore we see this wavering. Karnena Verakula, Ashwadhama Vikarna Khora Makara. Then we are given the names of two other people. Ashwadhama was an immortal, like a god. And he had great penance to his credit. And on his head was what you call the Chudamani, the crest jewel of all values. And that person was here siding the wrong thing. We can always see in politics also. One government is aiding another government when that government itself is on the wrong side. But otherwise, that the ideology of the government is something great and beautiful. And you do not expect them to do this, but they do it. And then say, you are like a shark. And Vikarna, who was a brother of Duryodhana, when Draupadi, the wife of the Pandavas, were brought to this assembly hall, and they were